STP, I hope your team is ready and can be seated. Honorable members, I think we have sufficient members to start our meeting. Deputy Chief Whip and the Speaker, I'm not sure if I should apologize for the late sitting because there was a meeting here. I came here at 5:30, so I had to wait for the meeting inside here. So I'm not sure if it should be me apologizing for starting late or what, because
Through your chair, we would like to apologize for not having been able to finish our business of the house before the meeting started at 17:30.
okay, apology accepted, but I didn't give you the opportunity to explain yourself yet. But apology accepted. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Sometimes when you are given the powers, Deputy Chief VP, you must also make use of it without undermining anyone. Honorable members, the Speaker of the Parliament, chairperson of the NCOP on the virtual platform, and officials led by the STP and all protocol observed. Good evening. Today marks an important engagement as we consider Parliament seventh year strategic planning, annual performance plan, and the 2025-2026 budget. This document reflects the institution's roadmap for delivering on its institutional mandate amidst persistent fiscal challenges. The strategic plan highlights Parliament's commitment to strengthening oversight, improving legislative impact, enhancing public participation, and building members' capacity. The extensive consultation process involving political parties, stakeholders, and committees is noted and appreciated. However, this ambitious agenda is framed within a context of constrained resources, including a current funding shortfall of 521 million and cumulative budget cuts exceeding 1.1 billion since 2020-2021. Our task today is to critically assess whether the proposed resources allocations are sufficient and realistic to meet the planned performance targets. Key issues for deliberation include governance alignment with the FABLA, adequacy of public participation mechanism, capacity building programs, executive accountability, and the viability of cost containment measures. The committee must also assess the ongoing engagement with National Treasury towards developing a sustainable funding model for Parliament. Honorable members, with this context, I now invite the Executive Authority. Before I do that, Cindy, I'd like to go to number 2, I guess, on our agenda, which is the apologies. Can we check if there is any apology?
Yes, Chair. Good afternoon, guests, members, colleagues. We've received an apology from Mr. Khadebe, who is traveling at the moment. In KZN, he had to visit the family of a member who is bereaved. Advocate Pindela and the chairperson of the NCOP will join as soon as they are able to, Chair, virtually.
Okay. No, thanks very much. Can I check if there is any apologies, maybe from honorable members or the side of the officials, STP? Okay. I saw the hand of Honorable Brian Molefe.
Chair, it's not an apology. I just wanted to find out, Kanti, what happened to that process of public works from the last meeting? Because now we had the last meeting and there's no continuation. We're on to something else now.
Yes, thanks, Honorable Molefe. We know about that, and since we have agreed that they've sent a letter, an apology letter for their conduct. So we still gonna look at it, myself and the co-chair, and then we'll revert back to the committee. And because now this meeting was the one that was scheduled, so we couldn't like maybe put it aside, but it's something that we are still gonna talk about it. We're only looking at the program. We didn't want to maybe cloud today's program today's agenda as per programmed and about all those other things. But what I can indicate is we have received the apology letter for the manager for his attitude of what transpired. Maybe what we can also request, Cindy, we can share in the meantime with the members on the group. I don't see anything, just to share with them, but it's not a matter of discussions because we have received it. The DG. Deputy Chief Whip.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. I think we should proceed with the business of this meeting.
Yes, I was not meaning that we should discuss it. Honorable members, I think now we go to item 3, which is the adoption of the agenda. Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Chair, and sorry that you recognize my hand now, but I just wanted to suggest, if it can be agreed, that on matters that have been dealt with in the previous meetings, maybe we have not concluded.
Recording in
we
progress.
should indicate how we want to deal with them. I know that last
Recording
week it was
stopped.
the matter that related to public works that we said we will come back to it. On the previous
Recording in
meeting,
progress.
there was the issue that related to the talent management as well as issues of PSO that were raised, and we said we come back to them. And I'm just worried that if maybe the Secretariat can just work with you, Chair, and the co-chair, just to say how do we come back to those issues so that we do not lose them, because we had promised that on all of them we'll come back with reports. Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks very much. I think what I can indicate, we have not yet processed it, myself and the co-chair, and also in consultation with the STP, because we don't want to bring matters here that we have not spoken about. Remember, whatever that we are bringing here is something that as ourselves, as co-chair, also in our consultation as executive authority and the STP, we are able to discuss it in the committee. So I think on that note, maybe we just have to apologize to say we will look at it and come up with a proposed special day for those special matters. Then that's what the promise that we can indicate. I think you can see that the co-chair is not available today, but he has connected virtually. It's because of he's busy with the exams. And last time, if you recall, we were congratulating Honorable Brian Molefe for achieving his academic. So now all of us, we will also want to join. So my co-chair is also busy with that studies and he's writing exam. I think it's one of the apologies, and I know that we are going to accept it. There's no problem with that. Cindy, let me also go to, I've now on item 3, which is the adoption of the agenda. Can the members, Deputy Chief Whip?
Thank you, Co-Chair. I move for the adoption of the agenda as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get the seconder to? Are you forcing him, Honorable Molefe, seconding? Yes, thank you. And I'm worried that the committee with Doug Moore is not here, so otherwise there's not going to be. Oh, it's virtual.
No, I'm here, Chairperson. Apologies.
So who's gonna control the meeting if the whip is not in the meeting? Yeah, no, thanks very much. I now going to hand over to the executive authority, maybe to start with the speaker. And you'll also advise, Cindy, you'll advise if the chairperson of the NCOP is on the platform so that after the speaker, then she can speak. Then we also will hand over to the STP. Thanks very much.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members, as well as members of the administration of Parliament led by the Secretary to Parliament. Today, as you indicate in the agenda, we are tabling in front of you the strategic plan as well as the annual performance plan supported with the budget. Chairperson, in February, when we were undertaking the orientation, we did briefly indicate the work that we had started doing since September last year on working on the strategic plan. It is the norm that when the new administration is set up, a process must be undertaken by Parliament to actually look at the strategic plan that will take us for the 5-year period during the term of office. Obviously, annually, we'll have to come back with annual performance plan on how we're performing against that strategic plan and how the resources that support it are actually expended. We had continued with that process after February to finalize the consultation with the parties. I want to indicate that all the parties, both in the NCOP as well as the NA, participated in ensuring that we get the views of the parties on the strategic plan. Some of them even gave detailed presentation in a written form, while others participated in the fora only. Some of the presentations that we received dealt with issues of the strategic plan, but others also raised issues that will have to be taken on other forums, such as the Rules Committee, because they related to rules as well as procedures, which we have indeed accepted that we will actually forward those so that they are deliberated upon in those structures. But the priorities that the various parties after consultation came up with in terms of the 7th administration that will support our strategic plan are 4, which is about strengthening our oversight, looking at ways in which we can enhance mechanisms to monitor government responsiveness, improve data utilization, and implement accountability frameworks. Some of those issues have already been highlighted in a number of discussions, as well as issues that have been deliberated among both houses on how we support committees to actually do their oversight work. The other issues related on strengthening oversight, how we put mechanisms to actually follow up on the House resolutions that relate to what the executive has to do and see to what extent there is responsiveness on those. So we will deal with those in detail in terms of what are the expected outcomes on all of these issues. The second priority that was agreed upon was enhancing our legislative processes and public involvement. Chairperson, you will be aware, and members, that one of the issues that have come up even in this administration, that have come out in the courts, but also some of the matters that have been taken up by other parties, asking to what extent had been public involvement in the development of particular legislation. One of those legislation, honorable members, you would know that related to the Traditional Leadership and Khoisan Act, which actually the courts turned back to say we needed to do more in terms of public engagement in respect of that legislation. But there are others that, as we know, are in court, such as the Expropriation Act. Again, challenges in court are about the extent of consultation at provincial level to seek the mandates and so on. I'm raising these issues because I think as the seventh administration, we really need to look at how our public involvement is strengthened, not only in lawmaking, but also on policy and oversight as Parliament. The other issue that related to enhancing our legislative process was the issue that members, even during the orientation, raised the time it takes for legislation to pass, which as an institution, we will have to also work to review such that we do not have legislating that take longer and longer in the process. And by the time the legislation maybe gets passed already, the issue that it sought to address might be irrelevant at that time. The other issue that was a priority identified for this administration during those consultations was improving public appointment processes. You know that there has been some concerns raised about how various appointments are made for people to serve in public institutions, particularly such as Chapter 9 institutions and others. So this is another issue that there was a view from the consultation that we need to improve that appointment process so that it's also transparent and that everybody gets comfort on how such appointments have been made. The last issue was improving international engagements, and not only just in participating in multilateral fora, but also to what extent, as Parliament, examine the treaties that our countries enters into, how those are ratified, how much time does Parliament have to actually engage on those issues to see whether the national interest has actually been covered. So, Chairperson, these were the strategic priorities that through those consultations were highlighted by members. And as part of the work of the administration, we have sought to look at how those can actually be operationalized in terms of the work that needs to be done and look at how we fund actually those areas. Issues that had been raised related in particular on enhancing the oversight has been the resources for committees, where there was a view that there has been limited support to committees to do their work, but also there hasn't been any transparency about the resources that committees have in order to undertake their tasks. So in the budget process, we've actually looked at how we support some of those issues that had arisen in the consultation process that produced the strategic plan that we have. So, Chairperson, we will then ask the STP with the team, after you have asked the Chairperson of the NCOP, to then lead us on the detailed presentation for your consideration. I thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. I'm just being informed that the NCOP chair is not yet on the platform yet. So I think let's allow the STP to do the presentation with the team. And then immediately when she arrives, I think she can be able to come. Thank you. STP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Court Chairperson. And good evening to Court Chairperson online, Madam Speaker, honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee, and colleagues that I work with in Parliament. Chairperson, as outlined by the speaker, the presentation we are bringing before this committee covers three interrelated aspects. The first one is the framework of the strat plan over the next 5 years, meaning the focus for this 7th Parliament. The priorities outlined, the annual plans to execute this 5-year plan, and thirdly, the budget resources that are attached to each of those components of delivery. So in the menu for tonight's conversation of members, we have outlined the purpose of the presentation. We would also touch briefly on the governance and the legal framework that underpins this work, the strat plan, and the priorities that arise out of the priorities that have been set, and then what are the risks that we have put in place to mitigate some of the targets we have outlined for execution. We will then also cover the budget context within which we are making proposals to allocate the resources, including measures we are putting in place to ensure that we drive operational efficiencies in the institution. So briefly on the governance and legal framework, honorable members, the informing components out of the FMPLA speaks to Section 13, Section 14, and Section 15 that define what needs to be done to prepare and deliver on a framework for planning, priority, and reporting. So what we are bringing is a response to those legislative imperatives. And as at December, members would recall that we started a process from August last year, leading up to December when the Executive Authority tabled the first draft for consideration of the draft strat plan as well as the annual plan. The first part of those three interrelated components of planning speaks to a very elaborate process of Parliament to develop its strategy. And in that regard, the Executive Authority directed and oversaw the entirety of that process. Our role is to prepare the plan and present those priorities as articulated and attach resources to give effect thereto. So the strat plan we're tabling is a product of those policy priorities outlined in each house and also the measures that we must take to give effect to that. The slide that speaks to consultation processes reflects the itinerary of engagements, essentially a full 10-month engagement that has been drawn and led by the House chairpersons of those political committees. It touched at the level of NCOP, at the level of NA, at the level of Executive Authority as the principal sponsors, the organized labor engagement internally, but also to deal with many stakeholders that have been outlined in those areas of engagements. So it is indeed a very engaged process that gave rise to this product. In terms of the key issues raised around these engagements, Honorable Co-Chair, is the areas around parties that, in addition to consultation processes that we have had, political parties were also required and requested to submit written inputs in addition to committee engagements. And based on those engagements, 3 political parties represented in Parliament gave us their written submissions as mentioned in the slide. And all these inputs were taken through a consultation process correlated with the discussions that took place, but also looked at some of those implications insofar as rules, practices, and operations of Parliament. In summary, these are some of the issues that have been raised. Madam Speaker has covered the 7 core priorities that speaks to members raising issues on the need for us to elevate and strengthen the question of oversight and accountability, but also look at mechanisms and measures to enhance public participation, the legislative capacity and impact assessment when bills are passed, what is the full loop of preparation and assessment once a piece of legislation has been assented to by the president, improved coordination and cooperation in terms of the intersphere engagements between local, province, and nationally within our own sector, improved engagements of committee operations, but also adequate funding for resources to support the work of Parliament. The member capacitation was also elevated as a key focus area. In terms of specific issues raised in relation to the budget inputs, again, the question of committee prioritization was elevated by the executive authority in support of articulations members made in each of the house. Specifically, funding has been raised to make sure that it's not only about asking committees to prepare plans, but we need to identify requisite resources to support that. The detailed breakdown of how administration is funded, but also look at the role of the Budget Office of Parliament, its accountability mechanism, but also what focus that the 7th Parliament would want to see that office playing in support of that. So that's basically the universe within which the strategic plan has been prepared. It then culminated into what we call the impact statement and outcome for Parliament. Generally, people will call it the theory of change. What are we seeking to achieve in pursuit of the priorities that the 7th Parliament has outlined? So the impact statement has been coined to look at a Parliament that transforms society and improves the quality of life of citizens. In so doing, it will oversee the executive in its primary role to deliver services to the people. And some of the outcomes that Parliament has identified for the next 5 years speaks to improved effectiveness of the administration to support the work of committees, sittings of houses, and so on. The impactful lawmaking, responsive and accountable executive, meaningful and adequate participation, enhanced member capacity. The fulcrum of the 4 areas largely speak to the constitutional mandate of Parliament. In addition to that, the capability of members has been added. It has then identified the need to strengthen pathways for oversight mechanisms, also public involvement improvement, improve public office appointment and disappointments, improve international engagements, but also deal with administration in terms of our own effectiveness. So that's the guide map of how Parliament over the next remaining months would measure its work until 2029. The strat plan specifically is framed around the 3 programs of Parliament. Program 1, essentially referred to as administration, both political and administrative. The legislation and oversight in terms of the primary and core mandate of Parliament. And then the 3rd component is the associated support, meaning member support, as well as any other bodies that Parliament has established. And these are some of the targets that have arisen to translate those ambitions outlined in the impact statement that has been outlined. The first program, as outlined, these are the 3 structures that I've referred to. Under program 1, our focus is on strategic leadership of Parliament, management, and the general corporate services. Whilst program 2 is dealing with interrelated aspects, procedural support, content support, and admin, as well as operations in each of the houses. Program 3 is largely about facilities and financial support for the parliamentary entities, political parties, as well as leadership role. So in respect of program 1 has related activities in terms of outputs. In the main, the issue of digital support at the level of radically creating a proper enabling platform for Parliament to shift its focus into a full digital Parliament operations systems, especially the core processes of Parliament. Secondly, the improvement in the internal operations of Parliament. But thirdly, deploy capability of digital infrastructure to enable Parliament to engage with citizens. So those are the three interrelated dimensions of investment that we are making on the shift. And when we look at the content of what are the target issues that we are looking at, is around improvement on the online committee work in terms of submissions directed by citizens, but also internally, the digital committee infrastructure to create instruments around dashboards for looking at mechanisms to monitor the work of committees and report, tracking mechanisms for resolutions that are taken in each of the structures of Parliament. And then we look at outer years on key targets to achieve. So we have identified that and then broken it down to key target areas to achieve that. The area of enablement on the administration transformation speaks to human capital strategy and all its related facets. What are the things that must enable the professional support of Parliament, but also managing human capital professionally in the institution? The specific outputs are then broken down to quarterly targets. And this outline, honorable members, speaks to 4 quarters that we are reporting. That speaks to how we will track those commitments in terms of outputs, the reporting mechanisms for each of the quarters, as indicated in terms of the detail that is contained there. Under program 2, which is the overall weight of the focus of Parliament in terms of its mandate, in that program, there is a number of outcomes that are outlined as indicated. The first one being increasing government representation, responsiveness rather, as well as accountability on the role of the executive. And then specifically look at executive responsiveness as a key output, accountability standards being set as an output, implementation of oversight, priority plan for Parliament in terms of the identified committees, but also to look at standardization of appointments and disappointments for Chapter 9, 10, and 11 institutions as per the Constitution. It then outlines the priorities in terms of what are the key outputs to give effect to that. And we've identified 4 of those areas. And over the next 4 years, we will be tracking, reporting around those areas in terms of effectiveness of performance on each of those areas. At the level of quarterly reporting for oversight and accountability, we have mapped out what are the things that we will be tracking per quarter and be held accountable for out of the 4 quarters that responds to the support for the core business of Parliament. It speaks to such areas where we'll be doing research, we'll be doing a oversight priority model, but also look at areas of improving on standards for executive accountability, so to speak. The detail then in terms of each of those is in the comprehensive strategy that has been shared in terms of the full scope of the work that we will be doing around this area. I'm trying to move my slide. Don't know whether it's freezing. I think it's proving that digital era is not helpful. So thank you very much. So on the issue of public participation, Madam Speaker has outlined the importance of this area, and this has always been Achilles' heel, especially on uncharted areas where bills are passed, signed, and they are operated, and when there's been challenges, there's been elements where Parliament has been found wanting, especially on meeting the test of adequate and meaningful participation of citizens. And in this area, we're identifying areas where we will be focusing on improvement of this area in terms of public participation improvement areas, and then identify targets that will be executed quarterly to give effect to identifying gaps that we currently have, but also look at public participation improvement plan, as well as implementation of some of these measures. Work has already started in respect of these areas. We have already prepared a public participation framework, as well as a practice note that not only looks at meetings, but define the interrelated aspects of public participation, meaning readiness for the people. How do we ensure that there's proper communication to the people when Parliament goes there, at a committee level or at a full sitting? Secondly, what opportunities are there to make written input in any process? Thirdly, what mechanisms will provide adequate participation for oral participation during the hearings, plus the loophole, the feed loop back to the people. And the committees have already indicated that it will be important that for any bill that Parliament prepares, there is actually a 6 weeks lead period for the public participation of Unity of Parliament to go and prepare that, meaning the material to be delivered, plus the translation to the languages, plus enabling people to be able to prepare written response to those areas. So these are just but some of the elements we are already putting in place to be able to operationalize the improvement of this. And this is a product of us having read all the judgments that have made reference to inadequacy or otherwise of our public participation mechanisms. So the quotas that we have identified would then look at public participation, implementation of the improvement plans, but also look at tracking some of the interventions that we are required to do beyond logistics for the meeting. My slide, okay. It moved twice, sorry. So on the area of capacitation of members, this area speaks to individual member support, but it also looks at the support we need to develop and support committee level capacitation when it functions as a committee, a member support directly, but also look at capacitation of engagement by members in various platforms. We have identified such measures around capacity building programs, but also areas where we need to have a comprehensive and holistic capacity building as a basis to be able to draw in interventions over the next 5 years. That will be a key deliverable for us in the current financial year to conclude that plan. On the area of lawmaking, specifically, the legislative impact assessment will be one of those areas to deliver on impactful lawmaking. And we have identified areas around measuring legislative impact assessments, programs to be conducted. And we're moving from a baseline of 2024, where we have already piloted 4 bills that we have selected to look at this. So for the current financial year, 6 more bills will be looked at to look at impact assessment for bills, impact assessment for laws already backed in relation to the stated commitments in the memorandum in which they were introduced, but also the stated objective of the laws. So at Parliament, when it conducts BRR reviews, budget reviews, it has an appreciation of whether there's requisite capacities to deliver this at the level of the executive, in the bureaucracy, and so on. Then where there's a need for intervention, these impact assessments assist Parliament to make necessary interventions in that regard. So these are some of the areas that the number of bills would be looked at, and committees will then identify bills that they would want to see, and on the basis of that, start implementing those bills in the respective quotas that are indicated. what are some of the key risks that we have identified to give effect to managing and mitigating the attainment or otherwise of these undertakings? We have identified for each of the outcomes, honorable members, what are the sum of the risks that can push back against attainment of this? At a primary level, funding constraints affect Parliament's work. And they are no different to many other institutions of the state that equally face the same measure. But it is also acute at the level of the Parliament in terms of the focus areas. And we are looking at measures internally to first start about implementation of cost-cutting measures on our side. But secondly, at a structural level, respond by developing a funding model that must articulate what does it take to implement one bill. If before the National Assembly now and NCOP, there's a number of bills that are projected for processing in year one, what will it take to implement this bill in terms of taking it through, consulting widely on it, reporting on it, and functioning of committees? What does it take for a committee on health? So that funding model will help us in that regard. But primarily, the self-reflection on efficiencies will be one point that we'll be focusing on in this regard. The human capital constraints as identified is one area we'll be looking at in terms of ensuring that committees of Parliament receive the requisite support in terms of content advisors, researchers, admin support in terms of secretaries and so on. We have already started a talent pipeline acquisition process based on the reports on the budgets that we have to support the work. So there's a full scope to deal with the impact minimization of risk that can weaken that. On the absence of facilities for Parliament to sit, we have also identified those. And indeed, day to day, we have difficulties in other sessions where there's sittings either joint or each house, where we have to look at infrastructure to support those. It's one area we're flagging that it is a risk, which in the rebuilt environment, it is being mitigated comprehensively. The technological aspects that we are looking at investment for, it's part of the new rebuilt environment to ensure that we have adequate investment to improve the digital capacity of Parliament to do this work. So these are some of the 4 areas we are mitigating for outcome 1. On outcome number 2, some of the risk we have identified speaks to flagging ineffective oversight by parliamentary committees, and how do we intend mitigating that? Monitoring and executive responsiveness rate to the House resolutions in terms of monitoring that. So in the APP, we have identified that we need to prepare this as guided by each of the committee and the House to develop accountability standards upon which committees will then measure and track the adequacy of responses and other mechanisms, oversight priority plan, as well as looking at streamlined processes of managing the institutions supporting democracy. The utilization of infrastructure in terms of investment for tracking the national development indicators. We are looking at development of a country outcome indicator based on the dashboard we developed last year, but also select certain indicators of the national development plan so that they can be managed and tracked by each committee. Data applications in terms of big data analytics for oversight and public participation to ensure that we widen the scope of engagement by citizenry is another mitigating measure. Public participation, the model that I've outlined will be one measure. On the capacity constraints and the capacity of members, the comprehensive strategy is identified as a measure to annually mitigate by making interventions on the capacity of members. The impact assessment for legislation will be tracking areas where lawmaking is found to be inconsistent or non-responsive to areas that must be done under outcome number 5. How will we monitor this plan over the next 5 years? There are existing governance mechanisms that are built in the joint standing in the financial management of Parliament rather. And one of those is internal focus in terms of program performance and finances, the audit committee, the executive authority, as well as the joint standing committee as three structures within which our reports must go through and be scrutinized. The governance documents, then they get referred to the joint mechanisms, and specifically we prepare monthly reports for financial expenditure and performance. We also prepare quarterly performance report that gets presented to the joint standing committee. We also prepare mid-year performance as well as mid-year budget as a basis for EA to review in accordance with the provisions of the financial management of Parliament. In the tenure for this strategy, by the time we reach 30 months, there will be a review of the strategy to look at whether some of the ambitions have been met, they have not been met, the reasons for that, so that Parliament can then make a determination whether there's a change in course or it may be responding to environmental contextual issues that take place like in any other strategic process. So those are the three monitoring strengths that Parliament would look at in monitoring whether we'll achieve that. At the level of resources, honorable members, to deploy within that, we are presenting the budget to respond to those priorities, but also reflecting in the context of an increasingly constrained environment where in our own situation for the last 6 years, similar to other institutions, we have experienced a fair share of budget reductions that cumulatively have cut our budget by a total of 1.182 billion. And in the context of that budget constraint, we now have the budget structure program that has been proposed by the executive authority in terms of how it is shaped, and it looks at three interrelated inputs: the members, the information, the facilities, and what is taking place under each of those. So we've identified where it falls under which programs. For instance, members, the work of members is under program 3, the advice, information, and lawmaking program 2, facilities management support form part of program 1. So that's the structure in which that budget is presented. And over the period, the funds available for appropriation, we have received an indicative allocation from National Treasury of 3,086,000,000. And when we look at the revenues that we have out of either savings or interest, albeit at a minimal scale, it takes that amount to 3.285 billion. In addition to that, for a separate focus, the rebuilding fund has a total of 1.789 billion. And that takes the total budget for Parliament to 5.84 for the current financial year. In terms of the appropriation allocation to support the priorities of APP, the budget is then split into these related areas: admin, legislation, and associated. And it breaks it down at the level of professional staff that support the operation, as well as the work of items that are acquired as support activities. So the breakdown then gives us the total up to 5.84. The framework for those proposals that we are making against this total amount available to be appropriated, they take into account that as we speak, our current budget has been reduced by 521 million rand. And it makes available that we need to shift the focus into resourcing more on the core business. And the proposal is that there's 150% that is adjusted to give effect to committee work, essentially reflecting that there's an increasing focus that has been given to the core work of Parliament at the level of committees. The oversight program also allocated fully on its budget, and member facilities allocated 89%. And the rest of the programs for the administration, about 51%, of what they have requested. That's what is being allocated to the administration. At the level of resourcing the administration to support the work, the priority vacancies that have been identified are more on the core business, the critical mission position of researchers, content advisors, language practitioners, where there's been limitations of capacity in that regard. So essentially, in short, the primary deployment of resources is directed at core business of Parliament. In terms of allocations to committees, the proposals from the executive authorities that with committees that we have in the National Assembly, 34 and 10 in the NCOP, an amount of 3 million be allocated as a baseline support. It may not be adequate, but as a baseline support to enable its committee to start planning and prioritizing its work. And then committees that do not have a number of outbound missions in terms of oversight and other areas will be allocated amounts as a seed funding of R1 million or 500,000 in that regard. The multi-party women caucus, as well as small committees that do not have a lot of focus areas. So the amount of 40 million is in addition to those allocations to say it will now be consolidated for NA at 30 million, for committees in addition to those individual committee allocations, plus NCOP at 9 million. And there's a detailed annexure that speaks to all those individual allocations. In terms of the overall budget, as we have indicated, that's the total, and it speaks to those areas in terms of core focus, that at the level of public representative support and welfare of members, it's 42%. And then the core business, 30% of the overall share, and support services at 28% in terms of that total amount. So the budget office, as an associated office, will receive an allocation of 20 million. So these are the totals in terms of 1.3 billion, 898 million, and 192 million, respectively. The breakdown by each economic classification speaks to those components in terms of 35% of that total budget is ring fence for the rebuilding, and the transfers to political parties at 600 million, and employees 27%, compensation of members 10%, and goods and services, it takes a percentage of 10, as well as compensation and permit, the contributions at a small amount of 2%. So that's the breakdown of the overall budget pie for Parliament. How is the budget by each of the programs? For program 1, the detail is the breakdown in terms of the executive authority, how much of that administration has been allocated, as well as the components of offices supporting the executive authority and Parliament, as well as divisions under which they support the corporate services and finance of Parliament. And those are the indicative allocations that executive authority will be considering. Under program 2, the breakdown for program 2 speaks to the respective houses, the allocations to NA, allocations to NCOP, taking the total of 992 million for the performance of lawmaking and oversight. And then the elements that are broken down is the support administration that carries the work of providing support for the actual execution of those activities by Parliament. We have also made provision for the hosting of the P20, as well as SADC, which are institutions that Parliament is part of, and also the standard annual calendar of our country, the hosting of the State of the Nation address. Those are the breakdowns under the program 2. Under associated services, meaning support to members, in the main as well as political parties. The total is 885 million as broken down into those various components as outlined in terms of support to associate services in that regard. Compensation of members, as indicated, it has got a direct charge implication that is funded fully from the National Revenue Fund, and the amount is as outlined, and it focuses on the National Assembly as well as the 54 NCOP members who are full-time. And that 3 to 5 NA excludes the members who are in the executive, but they are part of the 400 member total of NA. What are some of the cost containment measures we are putting forward to implement as administration? They speak to improvement on the areas of procurement planning, that if we do things better, we can improve in terms of ensuring that our methods take into account the need to create space for price negotiation and acquisition in terms of benefiting from economies of scale, but also look at the second component of travel management, where we tend to lose significantly. And one of the drivers that makes us to lose is the time lead it takes to get approval, sometimes difficulties given that international travel may have multiple dependencies to get the cycle improved. But we're targeting that area to improve so that we can benefit then from group acquisition of cheaper prices, especially for airlines, as well as improving in the chain of approval command. Sizes of delegations for travel is another area to make sure that it is managed commensurate with the resource limitations that we have, to make sure that we also improve on the travel processes in terms of type of flights and accommodation, as well as human capital to manage the wage bill, to look at effectiveness of employees, the ones we currently have. We have already started what we call workforce productivity assessment to make sure that we can measure the adequacy of gainful employment of employees, so that where they are not fully, we have a mechanism to identify where we can rescope jobs, but move people to other areas where they may be optimally utilized. So that's the first target, apart from skills that we may not readily have available to acquire. The other area is around looking at catering service management to improve areas of efficiencies, but also look at ICT licenses, to negotiate licenses, to make sure that those costs, however minuscule they may come, but if we aggregate them, they may improve a lot of our work as contribution to minimizing our cost drivers as Parliament. On the area of the overall work that we are reporting on, the main issues we want to flag to the Joint Standing Committee, honorable members, is that indeed the greatest limitation of achieving these ambitions is informed by funding constraint that, as we said, are no different to other institutes. They call for greater innovation, but the structural limitation of the budget is what we think the funding model will help us to articulate better how we feel we should be resourced as Parliament. The amounts that we have would require greater engagement by the Executive Authority in the cycle of budgeting, which is scheduled even for the next cycle, so that as it starts in July, we are better prepared to support the work of EA to engage with the Executive Authority of the budget. That's basically the main areas, honorable members, that we bring before the committee to table the 7th Parliament strategy, table the annual performance plan, table the budget to support those plans. Thank you very much, Co-Chair.
Thanks very much, STP, for the presentation. I think we're going to start with the members to ask questions. We're going to first start with the visual platform, and we'll come to the house. We'll come to the meeting now. I just want to ask only one question before I give to honorable members. To what extent will the current funding on the slide 31 to 33 STP on the program budget, to what extent will the current funding for program 2, legislation and oversight, adequately support the increasing complexity of oversight and legislative support functions? Are there plans to review allocations as oversight demand grow? I think that is my only question. I have on the virtual platform, Kalipi, Honorable Badenhorst, Honorable Dagmore. Those are the three hands I see there. There's another one, Honorable May, Helen May. Those are the 4 honorable members on the virtual platform. Then we'll come back to the meeting here. Honorable Kalipi.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you, co-chair, and the chair on the platform. I heard that he is on the platform. To the speaker and to the colleagues and secretary to parliament. First of all, I would like to get a clarity if the slides that were presented by the STP was shared with the members, because I don't have on my side. It might be that it was shared, but I didn't able to assess it. That is number one. Number two, I won't be long because I didn't have the presentation in details in terms of the slides, but I welcome the presentation if this is what is planned by Parliament in the 7th administration. Now, what we are interested on in terms of implementation, because this is a good strategy plan that is presented to us as members of the parliament, but the devil is obviously is on the implementation of what is being planned. I want to understand from the FMPPLA, because it's also involved the provincial legislatures. So how far does Parliament also able to, or do you have a mandate in terms of this act, in terms of ensuring that what is presented to us now in Parliament is taking place in legislatures? And if the members of the different legislatures are also having some challenges in terms of what is presented to us in terms of priorities, which are 7, is not taking place, can the National Parliament have powers to summon or to question or to ensure that provincial legislatures come and answer on behalf of the provinces? That is number 2. Number 3, on the priorities, which is very good, we welcome. I think we have said it in different times, many occasions, in terms of oversight. I want to understand your plan, STP or Speaker. How are you envisage to ensure that is implemented to in terms of the oversight? Because currently, I think there must be changes in roles if we want to ensure that the executive is fully accountable to National Parliament or to NCOP. Because currently, even if members of Parliament, MPs, can say that your answer, Minister, does not give details, it's unsatisfactory. The House chairs or whoever who's presiding over the plenary quickly to say, but the minister have answered. So if it's one of your plans as well to ensure that the oversight is proper and effective, so how are you going to align it in the absence of the rules? If you can also elaborate on that one. And the other thing that I want to understand as well, firstly, the STP also mentioned the IT committee or the digital committee. And also on the presentation, you also emphasize the importance of using the IT. Speaker, as we speak here, as I'm here in this meeting, I can't use my laptop, it's old. Remember during the COVID, Parliament was crying about a lack of funds, of which is still a problem everywhere in the government. As a result, you, Speaker, under administration, you took a decision that you are not going to provide members with tools of trade. Now I can't use my laptop. One, I'm a student. Secondly, we are using our tools of trade through the cell phones and our computers, but it's dead. We're waiting for, I don't know for how long. I always worry Miss Linda Harper to say, hey, here there's a problem. She just try shame, but in the absence of the police, can you also cover that one, Honorable Speaker? And the last one, which is the public participation. And I think most importantly, you are saying that you want to be an effective parliament, of which all of us have been emphasizing to that point. I even last time, STP, I will be sounding like a stretch record because I'm going to raise it again to say, if parliament wants to be a people's parliament, of which is a case in point on papers, but in terms of implementation is far from that. So how are you planning to ensure that this is people's parliament? I know we go on oversights as committees, but it's not enough. Even if we went and as a committee members to go and consult with people to say parliament is there, we also think that is, I mean, we are playing with people. Because after we listen to them, their outcries to say, okay, we're going to respect you, we are here, these are our frustrations. But at the end of the day, we come back to Parliament, we just write report, we go and debate that report, that's it. We don't even go back to that community, but hey, after we came to you for our oversight, this is the way forward on your cries. Today, we're also debating in terms of the roles, in terms of the new proposed committee on petitions. It's the same thing, Speaker. It's like we are just playing with people's emotions. So really, if you can also elaborate on that effect, how really the Parliament is trying to make sure this is people's Parliament to engage with people of South Africa. STP, your organogram, I'm still not clear about your organogram. And you are also saying the speaker, when she was doing the opening remarks, she alluded to the fact that there is an outcry in terms of language services interpretation. But that is not only the challenge that you are facing with Parliament. Many of the vacancies, last time when I checked, it was in Hollywood, Parliament acting. So if I can also hear clearly from the side of Parliament, when are you intending to have all vacancies in Parliament to be filled? Who is the Deputy Secretary of Parliament? The last time the Deputy Secretary of Parliament she was involved in the burning of Parliament. We never heard about what happened about her. Is any procedures that were taken against her? What is the solution? How did you close that matter that involves her? Then after that, it was her, what you call agreement. What was the status of the agreement? Who has also replaced her, if she was replaced? If not, what is the challenge in order for us to have a clear picture? Let me just pause there, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Honorable Mkalipi. Before I take Honorable Badenhorst, I just want to respond to only one, the one of sharing of the document. First, it was shared on Thursday, the 19th of June, and today at 0640. So the document has been shared to honorable members. Thanks very much. Honorable Badenhorst.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to put my video on for proof of life, but with your permission, I'm going to leave it off for my questions, just to save bandwidth where I am, if that's okay with you. Chair, thank you very much. And yeah, just to reiterate my colleague that spoke before me's request, that months after requesting it, we're still waiting for the cost organogram, and we just keep on asking every meeting until we receive it. So I think that the annual performance plan and the strategic plan is central to performance-based oversight. And I think one of my concerns is whether these plans are credibly aligned with institutional accountability frameworks, because it could happen that there's a misalignment between executive performance contracts and institutional objectives, which may dilute accountability and oversight effectiveness. So my question in this regard would be, is the Secretary to Parliament's performance contract explicitly aligned with the APP and the strategic plan? And could we get a copy of that performance contract as a committee? And I think we have requested that in the past, but let me just ask it again. Then, with regards to the budget structure, I think the current budget lacks granularity. Granularity, by that I mean enough information for us to do parliamentary oversight as a committee. Without itemized financial data, we can't fulfill our fiduciary and oversight mandate over the expenditure. So will we be afforded as a committee a dedicated session to interrogate the budget line by line, and not just headlines? I mean line by line. And can we get a detailed breakdown of expenditure categories, for example, travel, cell phones, overtime, specifically to the different departments? And then in the prioritization and equity of budget allocations, I think there appears to be disproportionate funding between parliamentary support structures. And the reason I say this is, and I speak now to slide 32 and slide 34, the Parliamentary Budget Office provides guidance on arguably the most important function to committees. Underfunding the PBO will probably weaken parliamentary's budget scrutiny and analytical capability, which will undermine the financial governance. So my question would be is why is the committee section now funded at 150% of its original request, while the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is a critical oversight support entity, is only allocated, I think, 20 million, less than 50% of its requests. Then talking to escalating costs and spending patterns, slide 37, I would like to know, why are there significant cost increases in the budgets of senior officers? So looking at the STP's office, what are the key cost drivers behind doubling the STP's budget from 15 million rand in the previous presentation, so that to more than 30, it's like 32 million rand now? And why have the budgets for the offices of the Speaker and the Chairperson escalated so significantly? It's gone from 60 million to 67 million and 47 million to 60 million respectively. Can we get a breakdown for these officers' expenditures, please, by office? I think it's really important that we keep on checking cost escalation, specifically in top-level officers, because otherwise we're just undermining public confidence and our credibility as Parliament, specifically during these periods where we're talking about fiscal austerity. So it will be good to get those breakdowns, please. Then slide 37, organizational review. So Parliament's undergoing a realignment process while at the same time funding vacancies. So continuing to fund unfilled posts without clarity on strategic alignment would probably result in inefficiencies and undermining the efforts at a structural reform level. So my questions there would be, why is there 81 million rand allocated for vacancies amidst an organizational review period? How will these vacancies be sustainable funded in the future years? How much cost saving is projected from the realignment process? And can we as a committee get a detailed list of these vacancies with indications of the criticality of the vacancies as well, please? Chair, I'll withstand with that at the moment. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Honorable Badenhorst. Honorable Dakmo.
Thank you very much. Chair, to the co-chair, Speaker, Chair of the House, SCP, all colleagues and members of the parliamentary staff. I also want to welcome the presentations that we have received. I think as we get these presentations, we begin to have a much better sense of, where Parliament is going and how we seek to achieve that mandate that is now laid out in the strategic plan. What I want to ask about is firstly, in practical terms, in terms of the allocation for this financial year, given the employment of staff members in language services, as it stands now, and by the end of the financial year, how many additional language practitioners will have been appointed in the estimation of the STP by the end of this financial year? I think we're aware that the Deputy Speaker, I think, was mandated to drive this particular process around the shortcomings in the language services. And I would just like to ask that practical question in terms of what we have now and where we will be in terms of the filling of posts by the end of this financial year. The second question relates to, in achieving the objectives that have been set, critical is the issue of building the capacity of the members of Parliament. Given that some of the members are here for a second or third term, others are new. So maybe I missed it, but I would particularly like to get the figure as to exactly what would be spent on the issue of building member capacity, whether that's through the bursaries that are available to members, any other form of training. What is the actual amount set aside for that? And then thirdly, obviously, given the broader constraints in the budget which have been explained to us, the issue that I want to raise, I mean, we've come out of a COVID period and, learned to do things in different ways, essentially around the virtual meetings or the hybrid meetings that we have. I think as a committee, all of us have expressed, our concern that, for as long as Parliament is not refurbished, we continue to have hybrid sessions, and then in cases of particular agenda items, we would then, have to hire an alternative venue. And also what has been said around the serious focus on building the engine of Parliament, which are our committees, and then taking that and linking it to public participation. I think we all agree that public participation often works better if we physically have a particular sector or a constituency in a public meeting face to face. But I think the reality is that we can, with the appropriate
While we're still waiting for Honorable Dagmore to come back, can we allow Honorable Helen Mayer to come in?
Yes.
Honorable Dagmore, we have a network problem.
I think great participation, of course.
Honorable Helen?
Use some of that consultation.
here.
Apologies, Chair.
Can I start?
I think I just lost the connection. Am I back? Almost done.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just quickly finish. What are the what is required at a digital level to ensure that the way we engage can include, because it is obviously a cost saver as well. The digital form where we have, members of the community gathered with facilitation at venues, that can actually link up to a committee or something that we are consulting about. And finally, is it possible to quantify budget specifically on AI tools, which would assist our parliamentary staff as well as members? Have we made a specific allocation?
Honorable Dagmore, I'll suggest that you submit your question in writing to the STP and maybe on the chat group so that we can understand what really is your question, because you are cutting and we can't hear what exactly is your question. So can you allow Honorable Ellen Mayer to come in?
Good evening, Chair, and this is just to verify that I am here, and I will turn my camera off if you don't mind. Good evening, Co-Chair. Good evening, Speaker. Good evening to our Deputy Chief Whip, to all my colleagues present, and to the STP. Let me just get my questions here. Okay, thank you, Chair. The budget shortfall of 521 million is significant. Over the past 6 years, Parliament has experienced a cumulative reduction of 1.82 billion. Chair, I'd like to find out is how are we going to approach that differently this year with National Treasury? What is going to be different this year? And are we going to be able to guarantee that it will not impact institutional performance, particularly in oversight, constituency work, and support services? I was looking at some of the budget cuts, and I'm trusting that those are the most important areas that we need. The next question is in the oversight and capacity. Is there a risk that budget cuts will compromise Parliament's core mandate of executive oversight and public accountability? What strategies are in place, which we have seen that there is a strategic plan with regards to protecting the integrity of committee work and research, but I'd like to echo the same feelings that my previous colleagues had mentioned. The other one is that international travel and red tape. There seems to be excessive red tape regarding approvals for international travel. Can you clarify the current process and what are the plans to possibly do our own travel services in-house, or to make sure that this is going to be improved? And given the role of Parliament in international diplomacy and global networks, what reforms are being considered to ensure members can travel in a dignified and efficient manner, including business class travel for long-haul engagements? I think that is very important. We don't want to arrive on the other side and you are so tired and so jet lagged that you actually cannot actually add value to the engagements that you are doing. And are there guidelines in place that ensure consistency and fairness in how travel requests are evaluated? Chair, added to that is that committees should be traveling as one or partnering with another committee. But I think that one of the areas that colleagues were feeling that one should not just cut the committees in half and say that half the committee will be going overseas and half will not. One will have to be strategic on who is going. Chair, the other questions that I have is on cybersecurity threats. Okay. The I'm happy that we are spending some of the budget into the cyber digital space. And I think within the next 2 years, we are going to see a very vast improvement on our digital space. One of the areas that we would need is actually to have an AI specialist, that AI specialist will actually guide us, because the areas of AI, I mean, if you look what's on the web at the moment, one is not even sure if that is the actual video of a real event or is that an AI event. And I think that was very important. I think using our media space, since we've all become members, most of our families are now watching YouTube, which they did not in the past. And I think from a public relations point of view, I think that it is very important that we actually maybe get that message out even more, so that people can actually log on to YouTube and watch Parliament in process. The other areas, I'm just ticking my list here, thank you very much, is I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Chairperson. I'll come back if you don't mind later. Thank you.
Here now, Honorable Clerk. Then Honorable Suisa.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Van Ryan, Honorable Malefe, then the Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good evening to everybody. And thank you for the presentation. I think it's a very good presentation, and there's some really good thought being put into this presentation in order to make Parliament function far better. There's just a couple of things I would like to raise, and in terms of public participation, I do feel that that we are looking at strengthening that line item. And I'm very happy to hear that, because I so often find that when we go out to public participation in terms of bills, sometimes you in an area, and I'll just take the tobacco bill, for example, you're in an area where there's no tobacco farming. So, for me, that's senseless. You should be going to areas where the bill has the impact on people's lives and jobs, etc. And that doesn't always happen. That's what I've experienced that. And so often public come to the public participation, they've really not been informed by Parliament exactly what the bill is about and what questions this should really be asking. And it sometimes turns into a service delivery debate instead of concentrating on the bill itself. So I'm very happy to hear that there'll be a 6-week lead time, as you said, Secretary, and I think in terms of communication, that's a really good thing. I do, however, want to highlight that in terms of strategy and performances, it's always really good to get a report that aligns with the budget on a line item, because then you can really understand what the spend is for each line item. And I would request that we really look at bringing our reports in that fashion. Then in terms of, we spoke about annual implementation of identified public participation improvements, and we spoke about that, but there's one issue I really would like to highlight, and that is the powers of the ministers in terms of putting in regulations. Now, so often a regulation changes within a bill or within an act or within legislation, and not even the committee is aware of that. And I think that is not a good way of doing business. And I'll just take, for example, and I sit on the health committee, and I'll give you an example of the cannabis bill that is that we're currently busy with, and where the minister was going to stop certain sales of cannabis, which is legally accepted in South Africa and would have a huge implication on jobs. So that we didn't know about that. I happened to find out about it and actually wrote to the president, and he put a stop to it, because these are things that we as members of the committee need to know. And if there's going to be big changes in terms of laws, I think Parliament needs to know about it, you know, and there must be certain public participation that aligns with that. And that doesn't always happen. So if I just thought I'd raise that because I've had 2 incidents out of my own experiences where this did not happen, and I did intervene in terms of that. Then, in terms, I note from the APPs, your key challenges, weakness, remain in accountability chains, internal processes and operational remain outdated, and resources and allocations all remain constrained for the unforeseeable future. I mean, how are you going to mitigate those issues? If you could just tell me. And then, but 2 of my colleagues spoke about the shortfall of the budget, so I'm not going to mention that again. The Secretary can give us feedback on that. And then, sorry, I'm just getting to my notes that I've made. Just the allocation for medical aid contributions is a shortfall of 20.6 million rand. And how would that affect in terms of you know, the medical aid contributions? And then in terms of members' entitlements, I see there's 21.8 million to be raised in adjustment budget.
Can I talk?
Sorry, if I could just get some clarity how that would, how that process would be. And then in terms of the high number of vacant posts still outstanding at the end of 23-24 with large percentages sitting on top salary bands, what posts are these and have they been filled since? Or when will they be filled? And what would the funding be in terms of that? Member May spoke about internal travel agency. I want to just ask, is there any competitive bidding made between the airlines with our travel agency that we get the best possible prices? Because, you know, sometimes that is not done and prices are inflated. So if we have any competitive bidding with the airlines, because we use SAA for example, a lot to travel with, and Airlink, and you know, we're giving them a lot of business, so there must be some bantering about prices there. But are they willing to give us a better price? Then just my last 2 questions, which I found quite interesting on this document that was given to us. Just how does the strategic plan strengthen the institutional governance mechanisms required under the FMPPLA to ensure robust oversight, financial accountability and performance monitoring over the 7-year period? And then given the emphasis placed by both houses on committee funding and the PBO capacity, how has this budget addressed these priorities, and what additional measures are planned to strengthen committee oversight, support and PBO functionality? Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Chair. Let me greet you and the co-chair, Speaker, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Chair, whatever I'm going to ask a question on is based on slide 24. Human capital constraints which may result in institutional non-performance. And Chairperson, I think in the last meeting that we had, I asked about the 6 advisors and I was told they are program managers, so program something. So the STP says that the budget has been cut with 1.2 billion. We've got 5 people that are doing work of people that are already there, which in my term, I would say that it's a duplication of tasks, and which means that it's a waste of money. Now, we can't just ignore the issue of the 6 people, the 6 program managers. My first question is going to be, Because in the last meeting, I was told one of those 6 people is a project manager. Project manager for what? Because if it's the project manager for the rebuilding of Parliament, that's the duty of the DBSA. The DBSA must come with a project manager. So if we have a project manager, then what is the duty of this project manager that is part of the 6 people that have been appointed in the office of the STP or in the whole department or the section of Parliament? Because Chair, I can tell you on good faith, I'm not sure if this person does have the qualifications because he was dealing with environmental issues. Used to be a board member of the Umgeni Water Board. So I want to know what is he actually doing when we speak about project managers, and why are we duplicating when there are people? I was told they are not advisors, they are advisors, Chair. Built environment advisor, which is done by ISSDD division, change management advisor, done by the HR, a strategic review advisor, done by the DM of strategic management.
Honorable Sibisa.
No, I'm coming to the issue of the money.
No. Yes, let's hear the order.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think what the Honorable Member is dealing with now is not on the presentation. And we said in our previous meetings that if members want a certain report to be presented to this committee, they must talk to the co-chairpersons so that we can all get the information from the report and interact with the report. So right now, the Honorable Member is bringing the very same issues that we said, those issues must be brought to this meeting. We don't want to discuss people maybe who are sitting in this meeting. And some of us, we don't have the information. Thank you very much.
Noted, Chair. We speak about the 1.2 billion shortage, and we speak about human capital constraints. We speak about staff shortage, which leads to delay in filling of vacancies of support roles. And in the last meeting, I think some of my colleagues have also already alluded on that we requested an organogram or staff establishment that all of the people that are working there, the chairperson. Now, there is underfunding, which is very critical. And again, Chair, because now Melda Kude says that I'm bringing things in, because what I'm saying is affecting why there is no money, where there is underfunding. Why? If the money that is there will be able to do the work that needs to be done, unless there is no duplication. Because I'm speaking about duplication, because if we've got 5 rands and in the 5 rands we have to divide it with 2 people that are doing the same thing, then we are going to be stuck to say that we can't even fill in the vacancies that are there. And Chair, I've raised this the last time. I thought that by now we'll be able to get a report, because there's a lot of issues. Yes, there is money that has been cut off. The budget has been cut, which is affecting. But in the same budget that has been cut, there is a duplication of work that has been done by 2 different people. And we can't ignore that. It is a report that we are waiting for, but we cannot ignore that. It's a fact, it's out there, Chair. So I want to know, how are we going to deal with where there is a cut in the budget? How is the STP going to ensure that the work is being done, take into consideration there are already people that are doing tasks that are supposed to be done by other people? Thank you very much.
Honorable Van Ryn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me start by welcoming the presentation, but also, of course, pass my greeting to the leadership of the institution that is in attendance and all those who are in attendance here physically, but also on the visual platform. I think, Chair, maybe I should indicate that SMK Party, we are deeply concerned of the impact of the shortfall that has been stated here. There's a shortfall of 521 million on the efficacy of a parliament as a critical institution in as far as our public participation model is concerned. We are very, very much concerned, Chair, and we think, yeah, maybe at some stage we'll get an appropriate analysis of the impact of this shortfall. Secondly, I think one honorable member stated the need to align a performance contract to performance plan and a strategic plan. But I think if it's all about issues of oversight, that should not be confined, should not only be confined to the accounting officer. It should be about the senior management, alignment of their performance contract with the performance plan as well as the strategic plan. Thirdly, Chair, the issue of the review that is being conducted on the work of the budget office, I think this committee need to get details of this review. What does the review entails, but also are there any clear timelines that we should be observing? I'm saying this, Chair, because as parliament committees, we are deriving a lot of value from this office. So we are a bit concerned that if we are not committing on funding this particular office now, this might have a negative impact on the good work that they are doing to service committees of parliament. So I think we need to get the details of this review. It should not just be shared with us without proper details. I think it's important for us as this committee to make sure that we get the details of the site review. And fourthly, Chair, I'm not sure this allocation for medical aid, the one for contribution for former members, is it not part of the direct charges that are made to National Treasury? Because its gratitude is, I think it forms part of services that must be provided to former members of parliament. So I'm not sure if this not part of these direct charges that must be effected from the fiscus or maybe from the National Revenue Fund. But also, what are the measures that are in place to cover this shortfall? Because it's quite substantial, and of course, it seems to be increasing annually. Nkinele matsogo metsing, modulasetulo, I'm about to finish. There is a reference to the allocation to committees. I'm not sure what informed these allocations. Is there any scientific basis for this allocation, or it was just a thumbs up exercise? Maybe it is because of the workload, because in some cases I can see it's a uniform allocation. So I'm interested to know, Chair, what informed this allocation? And lastly, Chair, there was an issue about the existence of a dashboard to manage performance by administration, a good initiative. But my question is, in terms of enhancing our work in as far as monitoring the performance of the team is concerned, how can this dashboard be availed to this platform or be used, I mean, to enhance our monitoring and evaluation function? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Let me welcome the presentation. And as well as the leaders of the institution who are here. Chair, ke kopa ho ya lolo. I want to, maybe it's a bit, it's a naive question, but I think it's at the heart of, for my own understanding of what we are trying to do here. The most serious problem confronting South Africa today is unemployment. It's at 41%. It's poverty, it's inequality. It's an untransformed society that we've been trying to transform for the last 30 years. It's major structural problems. Black people stay in Gugulethu, white people stay in Bishop's Court. So that is South Africa in short. Parliament is a critical institution. So my question is, given that those are our societal problems, what is Parliament's core business? What is Parliament trying to do, and how does Parliament contribute to resolving those issues? Because I think people are not interested in that the committees are meeting, staff and so on. People want a job. They want. So how do we contribute to those issues that affect people directly? Firstly, and what is Parliament's role in the transformation of society? Because Parliament is a critical institution. It's part of the three legs of government. And it is as important as the other two, the judiciary and the executive. But Parliament itself, what is its role in the transformation of society? And the other thing, Chair, is that in Parliament, working in Parliament, there is a thing that I have noticed that I can call parliamentary craft, which is understanding how Parliament works, not just for members, but also for staff. There are people who need to be trained to succeed the Secretary of Parliament, because it is a craft, it is a skill that requires certain skills. Now, how do we encourage the training of training people in this craft? Perhaps with our experience as Parliament, get students at tertiary institutions to be interested in, it's not just about public finance or public management. There is a certain thing that I have noticed since I got here, that is a craft of becoming a speaker. What is the point of order? When can you rise? When can you not rise? When can you do? And the rules of Parliament. The rules of Parliament are a particular area of law that is actually very interesting. So, but when and how do we encourage the training in consultation with other international parliaments and comparative studies and so on, to see how we can improve what we're trying to do? And then my last question relates to the budget, which is what is the plan for the funding of the 521 million rand shortfall? But I think Honorable Des has already asked it, but yeah, those are my questions, Chair. I'm sorry if I have gone.
You were short. I thought you were going to be long as you requested. Oh, okay. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chair. I hope Lindanka Sailo Lolo. Let me join my colleagues in welcoming the presentation by the STP and also by the Executive Authority, the inputs made by the Executive Authority. We appreciate the fact that you have set yourselves targets, which we are hoping you'll be able to achieve them at the end of the financial year. Honorable Chair, I just want to talk to the issue of public participation. It's good that you have measures in place to improve on the issue of public participation, because in the past, Honorable Chair, we used to go for public participation, and in some communities, we had to intervene as members of parliament by talking to the community radio station in languages that the people of those provinces understand better. So that assisted the process a lot, but we encountered some problems in some of the provinces where this was not done properly, because the people there would go all over the show, outside what you have come for in those areas to consult them on. So I just hope that the measure that you mentioned in the report, STP, will also assist, especially in deep rural areas where some of the communities are marginalized, so that they understand exactly what is expected of them when members of parliament go to those areas. I want to appreciate also the 150% allocation for parliamentary core business, because that will also go a long way in making sure that members of parliament are able to do their work as expected, to pass legislation, hold the executive to account, and also do public participation with the support that you have indicated in your report, that you are going to make sure that the core business vacancies are filled during this time, this financial period. Then in the past, we used to have this, was it called taking parliament to the people? We did that once, I think it was in the 4th parliament. It was both houses. We did it jointly. Come again? People's Assembly. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Klaso, for reminding me on that one, and Honorable Speaker. I think that used to work better, Honorable Speaker, but I understand the discontinuation of it due to maybe budget cuts. Why am I saying that? All committees would visit one province at the same time to do the oversight, and also the executive used to go there to respond to those issues. And after that People's Assembly, there would be difference in the lives of those people in those areas. I think if maybe we get some manna from somewhere, we can rethink of doing that again, especially in provinces which suffered the most with regard to the the disasters. So on the issue of permit, the contribution that we are making to permit is way too much, more than our salaries. They increase their tariffs annually while our salaries are still the same. So it's very expensive. So on this one, I want to suggest to this meeting that maybe we think of getting an alternative for permit so that we are not stuck in with permit. I know that some of the retired members of parliament are enjoying the benefits, but we serving members, this is way too much for us. I think we need to get an alternative on this one. Then with regard to traveling for members of parliament, the only issue that I have here is international travel. Yes, we are catered for, we are catered for as members of parliament, but the late approvals of these travels is costing parliament a lot. Because if we do have the calendar for international engagements by our parliament, so I want to plead with the executive authority to fix their eyes on this kind of travel so that logistical arrangements are made well on time, because this will save Parliament a lot of money instead of doing logistical arrangements at the last minute. So that is my plea with regard to international travel for members of Parliament. I do agree with some of the inputs made by my colleagues, but I want to caution this committee that we should refrain from discussing rumors or something that is not presented to us. If a member have an issue about something, we are saying that issue must be presented to the co-chairpersons and be brought to the committee formally so that all of us can have information and we will be able to ask questions about those issues. That is my plea, that we refrain from discussing something that is not presented. And we are pleading with our colleagues, those who have information, to assist us so that we can all have the same information and deal with it once and for all, not to have things that pop up in all meetings, in all the meetings that we have. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thanks. I hope you are not responding to Deputy Chief Whip.
Chair, we cannot be cautioned what to ask and when. Some of us, we do research, we take the time, we take this committee serious. So if we are going to be channeled to ask what and when we read the documents and we see that the information is relevant to ask a certain question, then we cannot be challenged. I want to know. If somebody else doesn't want to know, I cannot force people to want to know what they did not. I did the research. I went out there. I went to find the information. I'm looking for answers. So now I have to write a letter to the chairperson. So this matter must be brought here, which I don't know when it's going to be brought here. So I wanted answers because I know how the answers are going to feature in whatever that I've asked. Because I said whatever I'm asking, I'm basing it on slide 24. So we cannot be channeled what to ask, and we cannot be told when to ask questions, because we go an extra mile before we come to those committees to find certain information so that we should be able to understand actually what is happening and how we can get the relevant solution to whatever problem or the challenges that have been alluded in the report by the STP to say, now, if you respond like this and we see this is where the problem is, this is how we can resolve it. But if we are going to wait for a certain time after I have written a letter and then everybody must get the report, then we discuss the matter. By the time we discuss that matter, it will be too late. Because I knew why I'm asking that question. Nobody was interested in the 6 people that were hired. I'm the one who raised that issue from the first meeting until today. So we can never be challenged how to ask questions, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, honorable members. I think as I'm sitting here, I'm chairing this meeting, and it's very much important. And I'm not going to allow a situation, honorable members ask questions that even myself, I don't know. Hence, it is very much important for members, when they ask questions, they can be able to say, Honorable Chairperson, we have forwarded these questions to you. And if you didn't get an answer, then it's a problem. Because as I'm seated here, I don't know, I've not given a question. Yes, the questions of 6 people, now is a matter of the person is not qualifying. I don't know who's that person. Because I will have also did my own research on my own homework. And we said in the last meeting, all the requests will be responded to. And we just I just indicated now that I'm going to engage even my co-chair on when are we going to have a meeting on all the other issues that need to be responded. Because I don't want to talk about something or somebody that I don't even know. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was once a shop steward, and it's painful to talk about an employee raising the issue of non-qualifications and all those things, especially in the meeting. So let's try to respect each other and make sure that whatever that we do, we get an information as the co-chairs here, and when we come into the meeting, we are able to respond to everything. Thanks very much. I'm going to request the speaker and followed by the STP. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to indicate, Chair, that it was for the reasons that you have just outlined, that in the beginning of the meeting, I did indicate that maybe we need to structure when we come back to some of the issues raised, because the issue raised by Honorable Sivisa, we had agreed it will be an in-committee meeting. We have prepared a report, will be guided by the chair when that meeting will be for the discussion of all those matters that relates to human resource capacity, the current structure, the level bands, because in that meeting there's even asked who are in what band and how much are they earning, and so on and so on. So we agreed that those matters will be dealt with in committee by ourselves as executive authority with the committee. Secondly, Chair, I just want to remind members that the organogram we did present when we're dealing with the orientation. Nothing has changed so far. We had indicated that we continue to look at it vis-a-vis the resources that we have, whether we can, reorient some of the capacity, utilizing technology as well, and maybe reduce the number of vacancies that we have. In the last meeting, HR head, Mr. Mkaka, did indicate that already a strategy on talent acquisition has been agreed to be able to identify those committees in particular that require urgently support staff on content advisors and whatever. So the adverts were out and some of the processes of interviewing are ongoing, and we can give the detailed chair on how many have been filled and how many are still in the process of being filled. But I want to maybe start with the issue that was raised by Honorable Mlife. Because I do think, even though he might have said it's a naive question, I don't think it is. In my view, it's at the center of what we have to address. If the constitutional mandate says the responsibility of this parliament is lawmaking, ensure that we hold the executive to account, we do oversight, and all of those that are defined. But in a situation where as a country we are faced with these challenges of unemployment, inequality, underdevelopment, need for transformation to address the legacy of our past, probably the question is, in this 7th parliament, how do we utilize our role as parliament in terms of the kind of legislation that we put in place such that it addresses these issues? With respect to oversight, how do we conduct such oversight in a manner that it really deals with the issues that we are concerned about? And I'll just make as an example. Last year, if not early this year, the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry brought the financial institution here as part of their work on oversight, concern about the way in which funding of historically disadvantaged individuals, the majority of our country's people are not actually funded as they should be. And the way the qualifications criteria sometimes are being used as to how certain population are funded in this country. And I'm saying that could be one of the ways in which we do things. How do we address the issue of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment? Do we examine in detail our government programs, but also the private sector's priority and where they invest and how those investments are changing or not changing, the landscape as we would want to? For instance, on the issues of housing, and I'm making an example, hypothetically, what is our view as a committee on densification? Do we continue to have RDP houses going that way, further and further away? Or do we actually start to look at how we can densify our cities? And therefore, does that mean we need to relook at the kind of subsidy that we've been given on housing? Or I'm just saying that without steering away from our mandate, but how does that mandate get executed in a way that it challenges the problem that it addresses rather the problems that we're facing today? In my view, Honorable Mlife and honorable members, what you're actually raising is, as the 7th administration, as members in these portfolio committees, do we continue as we've been doing things, or do we need a step change? And when we look at these APPs, are we only looking at it as though it's part of what the administration led by the STP supposed to do, or us? Because this administration is supporting the members who are really need to ensure that we do this oversight in the manner that we're saying it must be done. So for me, I think our committee, which is this one, must reflect on how we demand portfolio committees of parliament in the way in which they utilize the resources that are expended to them to actually have this kind of output that we want to see. So that it's not about the question to the STP and the administration. I'm not sure how we do that, Chair, but we are a committee that is actually supposed to hold these institutions, not just the administrative alone, to account for the resources. That because these resources we're talking about are supposed to support this work of parliament, which is done by committees. So how do we make sure that these committees of ours do what needs to be done? The other issue that has been raised, correctly so by members, the funding of the PPO. Maybe just to say that we have not yet done or concluded on the work that the advisory committee in terms of the review, but the issue is not going to be taking a long time because they need to come back to us and report what their review proposes. But given the work that is strategic that we see of this committee, looking at our budget and how we've spread them, do we want to propose that maybe Speaker and Chair and STP, why don't we tweak from this element and increase the PPO budget? This is a proposal we're making, but this committee, in my view, has a responsibility to then guide and say, we're hearing you, but we do think maybe increase this budget line as opposed to that budget line. The issue that relates to the permit, it is indeed a so because it's not only permit, it's also about benefits of former members after they left. For instance, when former members leave Parliament, depending on the years they've spent, there's particular numbers of tickets that they get annually, which, they can claim to come maybe Parliament, to see the opening of Parliament or the budget, whatever it is. And what has been the practice is that those resources are drawn from Parliament. And from the question that was raised by Honorable Van Rooyen, it's a question, but I would also say it's a proposal to say, but shouldn't these resources come from the direct charge from National Treasury as opposed to the budget of Parliament? Because that's a drain that Parliament has to carry all the time. I mean, if you think about, because those benefits, for instance, don't start from 94. It's way back. So if your cousin, your father, whoever was a member of Parliament in 1950 and is still alive, still has a benefit. And these are the things that we tried to raise in the fifth administration with the Commission on Public Remuneration. Still a matter that hasn't been resolved because that's part of the drain on the resources of Parliament. The issue of permit, and I've always said it's an issue in my view that is within our purview as Parliament, because that law, it's a parliamentary law. So it is members of Parliament who can actually change it, either amend it to expand it. But again, the catch has been, how do you engage former members of the fund so that they become part of the process of the amendment and the transformation of this fund, so that it does not become such a heavy burden for the current serving members. Honorable Van Rooyen, I'm not sure whether you had applied for being a continuing member when you left. Exactly. Because if you are a continuing member and you're no more in Parliament, your costs are much lower than the member who is serving. We can say it's a bad thing, but remember, all of us are going to be old at some stage. So it is that subsidy that for those of us who are still agile enough, we subsidize those who had contributed as well during their time and are now off the system. But again, we can't be blind to the reality that the cost is heavy. And maybe there's a point at which we need to engage PAMED board about the escalation on an annual basis, because part of this shortfall, it's this escalation where the board will increase the fee on a yearly basis, where else the funding to Parliament doesn't increase at the same rate. So you always have this challenge that remains. The other issues that has been raised, honorable members, relates to the powers of ministers on regulation. And I think, again, it goes back to how we work. Because those powers are included by us as legislatures on legislation, where we give the ministers the power to regulate. We don't give a scope or a limitation as to at what level can a minister come back or go for public participation before doing the regulation. Again, it's an issue about, as lawmakers, having realized some of these challenges, should we not have certain caveat in our legislation? But it can't be the executive, it's us. Because one of the things that, in my view, sometimes we miss, when an executive bill leaves cabinet and is referred to a committee, then the committee has now full responsibility of dealing with that legislation. And I think sometimes we become hesitant and not do what we need to do as lawmakers and defer to the executive. Honorable Kalipi, you are correct. Some of the issues that we talk about on strengthening the oversight mechanism will require us to amend some of our rules. It cannot only be, about giving enough resources to committees and so on, because some of it requires Parliament to have teeth. I mean, what limitations do you put if ministers don't answer questions for 2 months or 3 months? What does our rule say? Because those rules are the ones that give us, as Parliament, powers to act in a particular way. So maybe to agree with you, some of those issues of oversight and strengthening that oversight will require both Parliament to do certain things in its own rules and procedures. The other issue of public, participation, maybe we also need to look at ourselves as Parliament, because we've got a house that is an NCOP that really is part of our extension to the 9 houses, the 9 provincial legislatures. How do we actually ensure that we strengthen the work of the NCOP in ensuring that the legislatures and the mandate that they bring have actually ensured public participation? So I do think that some of it will require us to really examine the way in which we have been doing things and to what extent do we want to change those things going forward in order to have this parliament that will become transformative, not by name, but by deeds. I mean, if I were to use an example, if you look at some of the weaknesses that we might be having in our system, do we still have enough at local level, your building inspectors, to make sure that the houses that get built by contractors meet the standard? How do we utilize our regulatory power as parliament to ensure enforcement of some of those things? But also, you know, I know there was a challenge with Spluma because the traditional leaders had some concerns about what needed to be done. But if you look at special planning and some of the challenges that were faced about building in areas where infrastructure should not have been built, either housing or even other public infrastructure. Again, the issue is how much teeth do we have as parliament on enforcement and, you know, to ensure that what laws that we've passed have got an impact in society to transform the way we want it to be. It's a continuous engagement that we must have. As I say, that part of, for me, the question will be to what extent does this committee strengthen its tools to make sure that the committees of parliament do what they have to do given the money that you would have appropriated to them as this committee. Thank you very much. On my part, the STP, and I'm sure the chair of the NCOP would also add.
No, the chair is not on the platform. She's not feeling well. So now let's allow the STP.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chairs, and thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Chairperson, on the areas raised, we will share responses with my colleagues present here. In the main, the issue raised, Co-Chair, on the extent to which the budget will support the work of oversight and public participation. Indeed, the shift of resources that this budget demonstrates is aimed at supporting that. It is, however, not adequate given the scale of responsibilities, but we take comfort that with the baseline allocation, it will now enable committees to plan and prioritize what they would need to focus on, so that on the basis of that, we can see the bills, for instance, before each committee relative to the other, and what is planned for public participation and or oversight based on the priority plan. So it's basically a seed funding, Honorable Van Rooyen and Chairperson. On the area of engagement on the overall trust of the budget of Parliament, indeed, we have a shortfall of 521, and it was similar to last year. We had 261, and year before 240. And hence it is now cumulative at 1.182 billion. It is an engagement point for Parliament to engage with National Treasury. And part of the work we are doing as by the APP is the development of a basis for a structured engagement with Treasury, because Parliament hasn't had a funding model. So engagement has been on the basis of E&E, indicative allocations, estimate of annual expenditure, and then based on that, Parliament will be able to implement what it has, but a scientific determination of what it needs to perform in a committee, what it needs to take through a bill hasn't been done. And through that work is what we think it will assist to make sure that the engagement of Parliament within our Treasury has a basis that responds to core mandates of Parliament. So that cycle of engagement, as indicated in the concluding remarks of the presentation, seeks to address that. Honorable Mkalipi, you asked the area of a good strategy, how will it relate to provincial legislatures? Is there a point of interaction? Yes, when we prepared for the 7th Parliament, we prepared a macro strategy. And during the engagements in July up to date, a collaborative pillar is one of those strategies that seeks to bring together areas where parliaments, legislatures rather, will have to look at the guiding framework that Parliament has prepared. And that has been shared by speakers in the 6th Parliament, as well as shared with legislatures as a planning. Some of them confirm that they are also following the guideline framework that Parliament has. So we think that it serves as a better mechanism so that when there's planning for collaboration of committees of education in a province and a committee of basic education here, they could then have a basis to look at where are the intersection points and where are the areas of common approach around that. So in terms of the work of supporting members in terms of accountability standards, as well as executives when they account, as we have indicated, honorable members, the accountability standards framework and a responsiveness framework for oversight seeks to contribute towards improving measurement tools that Parliament will utilize to be able to track and follow responsiveness of executive, including accountability standards on adequacy of responses. The tools of trade, Honorable Mkalipi, indeed, the allocation of tools of trade for members are guided by a policy framework which allocates members and gadgets generally who have a life cycle. So in the cycle of upgrades, we have set 36 months to be able to make sure that a member is eligible for a review, except for instances when it is lost or broken or malfunctioning. But I've been advised that specifically with regard to yourself, you are due by end of June for the review of your gadget. So there's a clear framework for any member in regard to the tools of trade, including cell phones. In terms of areas of structures, I think Madam Speaker has responded on organograms. Filling of positions, Honorable Badenost, for deputy secretaries to Parliament. Indeed, in the current structure as it is, it makes provision for core business as well as support services, which is corporate. So it has provision for 2 deputy secretaries, but those have not been filled precisely because Parliament was currently undergoing a review since the 6th Parliament around a new organogram that must speak to the 7th Parliament priorities. And that determination will then be made informed by the strategic plan as presented today. In terms of performance management for Parliament, there's a performance system for Parliament, fairly comprehensive, that is being implemented for every employee of Parliament. Every employee annually signs a performance agreement and they are reviewed, and annually there's an assessment for every employee, starting with the head of the administration, up to the executives, up to the last employee. And it is audited by Auditor General on an annual basis as part of institutional support. So this strategy is going to be cascading into scorecards for divisions and heads and staff so that there's quarterly monitoring and execution around that. On the area of budget alignment, as well as budget office, Honorable Badenost, Madam Speaker has responded to a process that will guide that. and the CFO would answer on the allocation of resources to the EAs, as well as the vacant positions that are funded and on a integrated basis. The issue of digital strategy and the need for us to have AI and where we are for support, I would ask my colleague in the ICT, Ravi, to respond to that part. And Honorable Nila May, you have raised the issue of for Parliament to engage Treasury on the budget differently. The travel management system is currently under review in Parliament. And indeed, the points you have raised, Honorable Nila May, as well as Deputy Chief Whip, around the need for us to have timeous approval in that cycle. It has got interdependencies, but there's a process to make sure that even political approvals are improved so that administration can move faster on that. The idea, Honorable Clerk, for us to engage with travel management services directly with airlines to look at this, it's an area that strikes a balance in terms of the supply chain processes. At the current moment, Parliament uses travel agents, and it's them that acquire travel in their own mechanisms. So we haven't yet explored the direct engagement with each airline. And I think it's one of the ideas that we would look at a clear guided approach and what are the constraints, if any, we were to do that. But what I could say, our members, is linked to us establishing an internal travel management service. And once we have that, it will be better for us to then have a direct interface outside the loop of travel management services, so that we can balance this matter in a manner that seeks to achieve economies of scale for Parliament. The area of training of members was a priority for this year for member capacity. Honorable Dagmo, Ms. Linda Harper, who's our member support services, would respond to that. On the vacancies that we have for researchers, how many for critical vacancies, language practitioners, we identified 17 in that area of language practitioners and researchers. As Madam Speaker indicated, they are at various stages of recruitment as we speak, and those will be updated from time to time. And I would like to leave to the rest of the colleagues, starting with the CFO on the areas of additional budget factors as raised, and followed by Linda, and then followed by Ravi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, STP. Thank you, Honorable Chair, Speaker, and the members of the committee. The allocation of the budget, I think STP already covered, and the Honorable Chair on other areas in terms of the budget for the permit direct charge. It's not a direct charge. It's coming from Parliament baseline. The 85 million in the shortfall has to be funded from Parliament baseline. And Honorable Speaker already indicated in the travel entitlements for the former members of Parliament. In a year, like in 2024-25, we spent 6.7 million for those travel entitlements. In the prior year, 5 million. So that's the money that could have been used for the co-work of Parliament, but we have to fund from the baseline. They all come from the baseline of Parliament. So there was a question in terms of the funding for the executive authority offices. The offices were not fully funded for what was requested. They are impacted like other offices in terms of the shortfall impacted the offices as well. They are given less than what was required. The money is given to the offices to be able to support the executive authority to do their work, also including the traveling expenditure. So when it comes to the office of the accounting officer, STP, in that office, there are vacancies, there is vacancies budget of 81.5 million. That amount is not for the office, it's for the institution. All the institutional vacancies, the ones that we're saying now we're trying to fund the vacancies and fill the vacancies for the core business. That money is sitting there, the vacancies budget in the office of secretary. When you're looking at that office, you may think it has a lot of money, but it's a centralized budget for vacancies. Also, there is an amount included in the office for the ICT network upgrade and disaster recovery. That is for the institution, not for the office. So that's how the budget is allocated. All offices are impacted by the shortfall. They are not exempted, they are not immune to the shortfall. Well, there was a question on the budget for member capacitation. There's a budget of 15.1 million, including for bursaries and the training of the members. So it's funded. I think that was all from my side. Thanks, Esther.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening to Speaker and to the members. In terms of capacity building, we will be using the data from the skills assessment to inform future offerings of capacity building for members. This will be done in consultation with the various areas that are currently supporting capacity building, and that includes the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, the legislative sector support area, as well as committees and other sections within Parliament. Our current focus has been on the provision of bursaries. We have to date processed, it's approximately 65 bursaries for this current Parliament, and we have members currently registering for the sector courses. I don't unfortunately have numbers as the registrations are still open, but there has been a very good uptake on the sector courses, and we'll be able to provide numbers on the actual registration process there at the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Linda. Ravi.
Good evening, Speaker and honorable members, Secretary and colleagues. There were a few matters that were raised that relate to the digital strategy, artificial intelligence, and the use of the dashboards. Our digital strategy, the transformation strategy, will obviously be aligned with our parliamentary strategy once that's approved by all the stakeholders. We intend to make big data, artificial intelligence, an integral part of that strategy going forward. And of course, to assist the members in their work. With the issue around artificial intelligence, we've already started a lot of work in developing a sovereign artificial intelligence capability. There is currently a national policy framework on AI that's been released by the Department of Digital Technologies, and we hope to be able to align within that framework. Of course, I think it's important to understand that there are artificial intelligence tools that are both valid, provide good information, and also can be used for not so good purposes. And so we're developing guidelines on the use of those tools, particularly how to use those ethically and to derive maximum benefit. And those will be released shortly to members and staff. In terms of the dashboards and the purpose there in enhancing and monitoring the oversight work, we intend to create dashboards that have very specific purpose for committees and to address particular needs of particular committees, either within the cluster or specifically to the committee. We intend to pull sources of data from National Treasury, from Stats SA, from the Department of Performance Monitoring, and various other sources, and create dashboards that allow the committees to monitor the work of either departments or Chapter 9 institutions, etc. That's work that's ongoing. We hope to have a few of those dashboards available. They will be published and members will be given full access of those. I think Honorable Dagmo raised a question around the use of technology in public participation. There is a lot of potential in using the virtual platforms, in engaging with the public. I think as a House, we need to engage and provide rules on how that engagement should happen. But there's a huge potential within the technology to assist members and the public to engage. I think it's important that we maximize the use of that technology as part of our cost containment measures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Just to augment the point the CFO has indicated, the allocations on executive authority offices for budget takes into account the other offices that are attached to those with assigned responsibilities, like deputies and house chairpersons in each of the respective houses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe just in conclusion, there's an area we did not fully answer with respect to the question asked by Honorable Mlife on the training and ensuring that we support members, which I would really say it's more succession planning, to say at an administrative level, what is being done to ensure that we are able to train, staff so that if there's an executive, there's a vacancy at a senior level, you are easy internally to also have people who can take on that responsibility. Similarly, within Parliament and its management role, I do want to say that maybe for now, we do not have a specific training that relates to that. It's something we would look at. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And I think there are very serious points, Honorable Speaker, that you have spoken about, especially the benefits of members who have been in Parliament. And it's like now, at least we have one who can attest to say I'm beneficiary. Yes. Yeah, well. So now the question is, as honorable members, do we want to disadvantage the members whom are supposed to also benefit are now have to exit currently? So some of the things we need to be careful when we raise them. It doesn't assist anyone for you to be able to say thank you to a person who have served in Parliament and say go and enjoy these benefits. So I think those are the issues, Speaker, that is, I realize that, we need really very serious discussions, and we must make sure that you yourselves and Honorable Van Rooyen, we are able to get information. Go to archives. We want that information. We want those resolutions. Because now we want to claim as if we can do the good legislations. That at the end of the day, who's going to benefit? So let us make sure that whatever that we want to discuss, in this meeting, it is going to benefit our own people, our own members. They should be able to say, yes, I was part of this Parliament and I've enjoyed, and this is the benefits that I've incurred. It cannot be correct that people who served in Parliament during apartheid era are still benefiting. But myself, who just joined, when I go on pension, Honorable Van Rooyen, I can't. And it is the people, those who are saying we want to transform Parliament, that are coming with the laws that are disadvantaging me. Where is the transformation that we're talking about? So some of the things, let's think twice when we raise them, when we talk about them in these meetings, because it does not help. We can appear on TVs raising issues about somebody else that you don't know, but where does that thing take you to? So I think those are the issues that we must be very careful. I think we have given this opportunities to honorable members, and unfortunately, I'm not going to allow any discussions or any questions from anybody. So if there is any member who will want to contribute or maybe ask question, let's share those questions on the platform and maybe send it to myself and the co-chair, so that tomorrow we are able to respond to them, because we'll be able to talk to the STP and the EA. That will be able to assist us. But I just wanted to raise that point, because as I was listening, on a daily basis, as I indicated sometimes in one of our meetings, to say we should not be seen disadvantaging our own members of parliament, including our own staff members. We are going to come up with a date. I'll talk to the co-chair. We're going to talk to those issues that has been raised in many meetings that we've spoken about. We'll talk to the EA. We're going to talk to the STP. We'll have a special meeting whereby we're going to respond to all those issues. And we are not going to hide anything, STP. There was an issue I hear that you never responded to. Honorable Van Roel asked the question, I'm not sure if it's me who didn't listen to the response, on what informed the 3 millions of the chairpersons. If I'm not wrong, there was that kind of a question. So that question was not responded. Was it responded? Okay. No, thanks very much. Maybe I couldn't hear it, but because I didn't want us to focus on one area. One area, I mean, you focus on the executive authorities' offices, you focus on the STP's offices, but I'm also the chairperson of the committee. But when coming to me, I don't want to talk about myself, how I'm going to get this. Rafael is not the chairperson, but I want to know, how did my office get the 3 million? So it has to be responded to. Yeah. So you need to be consistent in responding to the issues. I think, honorable members, thanks very much for your contribution to these meetings. And it was very much informative. At least let's make sure that in the next meeting, we're going to make sure that we get all the questions or the meeting, the outstanding issues that has not been responded to. In the meeting, we're going to only focus on that, and so that we can also make sure that everything that we are discussing, there's no any outstanding issues. And thanks very much, Speaker. You know, every day you are bringing new things and you are opening our eyes to say, hey, when we talk of transformation, there are things that are happening during apartheid. And they benefited, and we also want to benefit. Be careful as to take your decisions. So go to archives, get us those information. We also want to benefit. With those few words, and remember, thanks very much.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. Comrade Chair. Thank you very much.